The Jerk made Steve Martin a superstar, but behind that innocent smile lurked Hollywood's cruelest deceptions.
Millions of people look at this book every day!
Racist jokes were cut to save careers. Bernadette Peters suffered in silence. And the studio? They stole Martin's fortune just like his characters. These are 10 shocking secrets about the Jerk. And the bonus? Martin's famous "born a poor black child" line nearly ended everything.
I was born a poor black child.
Well, excuse me. This rags to riches story gets darker than any oil can. 1. Steve Martin's racist material was secretly censored. Here's what they never told you about the massive censorship campaign that sanitized Steve Martin's original vision for The Jerk. Martin's initial script contained dozens of racially charged jokes and scenarios that studio executives quietly removed without his permission, fearing public backlash and boycotts. The comedian's boundary-pushing stand-up material was systematically neutered by nervous producers who wanted the profits without the controversy. What shocked the industry most? Martin discovered the cuts only after filming had wrapped, realizing that his artistic vision had been compromised by executives who treated him like a puppet rather than a creative partner. The devastating truth. The film's famous "Born a Poor Black Child" opening was the only remnant of much darker racial comedy that would have destroyed Martin's career if it had remained intact. His breakthrough role was actually a heavily edited version of comedy that was too dangerous for mainstream audiences, making his success feel hollow and compromised to the man who'd created it. 2. Bernadette Peters' humiliation was calculated cruelty. Nobody knew that Bernadette Peters' treatment during the Jerk production was a systematic campaign of psychological abuse disguised as comedy direction. The veteran Broadway performer was deliberately humiliated by male cast and crew members who treated her character's naivety as permission to mock and belittle the actress herself. Peters endured daily harassment and inappropriate comments that she was told were just part of the filmmaking process. What the studio didn't care about? Peters' later revelation that she felt trapped and powerless, unable to complain without being labeled difficult or unprofessional. The devastating truth? Her sweet, innocent Marie performance came from genuine vulnerability and fear rather than acting choices, as she navigated a hostile work environment that treated women as disposable entertainment. The romantic comedy that audiences loved was actually a documentation of workplace abuse, with Peters' authentic discomfort being captured on film and sold as charming awkwardness. Her career breakthrough came at the cost of her dignity and emotional well-being. 3. The Optigra invention destroyed real lives. Here's the shocking truth about how The Jerk's fictional Optigra glasses caused real-world chaos that ruined innocent people's lives. After the film's release, multiple inventors filed lawsuits claiming that Martin and the studio had stolen their actual eyewear patents and turned them into comedy props without permission or compensation. What nobody anticipated? The movie's popularity led to copycat products flooding the market, creating a legal nightmare that bankrupted several small inventors who couldn't afford to fight major studios in court. The devastating truth? Real people lost their life savings and businesses because their genuine inventions were mocked in a comedy that made millions while they got nothing. The fictional success story that entertained audiences was built on the real financial destruction of working inventors, whose dreams were stolen and turned into punchlines. The film's central metaphor about getting rich from a simple idea became a cruel reality for people whose simple ideas were appropriated without consent. 4. Steve Martin's banjo skills hid deep depression. Here's what they never told you about Steve Martin's musical performances that masked a crippling depression threatening to destroy his sanity. The comedian's famous banjo playing wasn't just a quirky character trait. It was Martin's desperate attempt to maintain his mental health during a period of psychological breakdown. Behind the scenes, Martin was suffering from severe anxiety and suicidal thoughts that he hid from everyone around him. What shocked his friends most? Martin's seemingly effortless comedy performances required massive amounts of medication and therapy just to get him through each day of filming. The devastating truth? His brilliant physical comedy came from a man who felt completely disconnected from his own body and emotions. using performance as a shield against psychological pain that threatened to consume him. The jerk who made audiences laugh was actually dying inside, and his success only made him feel more isolated and misunderstood. 5. The studio stole Martin's profits like his character. Nobody knew that Steve Martin's real-life financial experience mirrored his character's rags to rags story in the most devastating way possible. The studio used creative accounting and contractual loopholes to steal millions of dollars in profits that should have gone to Martin, leaving him financially vulnerable despite the film's massive success. What the lawyers didn't expect? Martin's discovery of the theft years later led to a bitter legal battle that exposed Hollywood's systematic exploitation of performers who trusted the wrong people. The devastating truth? Martin's famous scene about losing everything wasn't just acting. It was him processing his own financial betrayal by an industry that had promised him wealth while secretly stealing it. The irony was crushing. The movie about a naive man being cheated by greedy capitalists was itself a vehicle for greedy capitalists to cheat a naive performer. Martin's brilliantly innocent performance came from genuine shock at learning how cruel and dishonest his business partners really were. 6. The dog trainer abused animals for laughs. Here's the devastating truth about the animal cruelty hidden behind the jerk's seemingly innocent dog scenes. The film's canine performers were subjected to abusive training methods that caused genuine fear and distress to create comedic reactions for the cameras. What shocked animal welfare investigators who examined the footage later? The dog's apparent confusion and panic weren't acting. They were authentic responses to systematic mistreatment designed to make them behave unpredictably. The devastating truth? Several animals used in the production suffered injuries and psychological trauma that shortened their lives and made them unsuitable for future work. The trainer responsible for the abuse was quietly fired and blacklisted, but the damage had already been done to innocent creatures who couldn't defend themselves. The laughter generated by their distress became a permanent record of Hollywood's casual cruelty toward the most vulnerable members of any production. 7. Carl Reiner's direction disguised his contempt. Here's the shocking truth about director Carl Reiner's secret disdain for the jerk's lowbrow humor and his star's comedic style. The veteran filmmaker accepted the project only for financial reasons, privately considering Martin's physical comedy beneath his artistic dignity and intellectual standards. Reiner's direction was deliberately minimal because he couldn't bring himself to engage seriously with material he found embarrassing and crude. What the cast didn't realize, Reiner's hands-off approach wasn't creative trust, it was professional disgust disguised as artistic freedom. The devastating truth. Reiner later admitted he felt ashamed of his involvement in the film, considering it the worst work of his distinguished career despite its commercial success. His contempt for the project infected the entire production, creating an atmosphere where the director's embarrassment made everyone else question the value of their work. 8. The carnival sequences exploited real performers. Nobody knew that the jerk's carnival scenes documented the systematic exploitation of actual traveling performers who were paid almost nothing for their participation. The production used real carnival workers as background performers, taking advantage of their desperate financial situations to secure authentic atmosphere at bargain prices. What shocked labor investigators most? The carnival performers were essentially unpaid extras who received no benefits, no safety protections, and no recognition for their contributions to scenes that became the film's most memorable moments. The devastating truth? Their authentic performances as carnival workers weren't acting. They were people doing their actual jobs for a movie that would make millions while they remained trapped in poverty. The film's celebration of American dream success was built on the continued exploitation of people who would never experience that success themselves. 9. The special defect scene predicted real tragedy. Here's the devastating truth about how the jerk's Optigra defect storyline eerily predicted actual product liability disasters that would kill and injure thousands of real people. The film's central plot about defective products causing mass harm was based on genuine corporate cover-ups and safety scandals that were happening simultaneously with the movie's production. What nobody anticipated? The comedy's exaggerated scenarios became horrifying reality when multiple real product recalls followed identical patterns to the fictional story. The devastating truth? Several audience members who laughed at the film's product liability jokes later became victims of actual defective products that maimed and killed using the same corporate negligence patterns depicted in the movie. The fictional lawsuit that enriched Martin's character was mirrored by real lawsuits that destroyed actual lives, making the film an unintentional documentary about corporate murder disguised as comedy. The laughter that seemed innocent was actually audiences enjoying a preview of their own potential victimization. 10. Steve Martin's success destroyed his authentic self. Here's the shocking truth that nobody talks about. Steve Martin's transformation into a mainstream comedy star required him to systematically destroy every authentic aspect of his personality and artistic vision. The jerk's success trapped Martin in a public persona that bore no resemblance to his actual interests, intelligence, or creative ambitions, forcing him to pretend to be stupid for audiences who couldn't appreciate his real talents. What the industry didn't understand, Martin's later retreat from comedy wasn't artistic evolution. It was psychological survival as he desperately tried to reclaim an identity that success had stolen from him. The devastating truth? The man who became famous for playing a jerk was actually a sophisticated artist who felt like he'd sold his soul for popularity that brought him no genuine satisfaction. Bonus fact: the phone book scene was Martin's cry for help. Here's what they never told you about Steve Martin's famous phone book excitement scene. The moment wasn't scripted comedy. It was Martin's genuine breakdown captured on film as he desperately tried to find meaning and identity in a world that had reduced him to a commodity. The devastating truth? Martin's authentic joy at seeing his name in print represented his real psychological need for validation and recognition as a human being, rather than just an entertainment product. His performance was brilliant because it wasn't performance at all. Rags to Riches looked like pure joy in 1979. But the jerk's reality was crueler than any con game. Want more shocking comedy secrets that'll destroy your innocence? Hit subscribe and ring that bell. This gets jerky.